Every time I would see a trailer for this movie, and every time they would showcase the fact that the real-life heroes of this event are playing themselves in the movie, I always thought, wow, this movie is gonna suck. The 1517 to Paris tells the story of three guys. Two of them are soldiers, one of them is their friend, who are on a European road trip and stopped this terrorist on board a train that they were on that was headed to Paris. It was something that actually happened about 3 years ago in 2015, and it was a really brave effort that unfortunately this movie does no justice in showing off. So this is done by Clint Eastwood. I enjoyed Sully, which he made in 2016, but I didn't find that movie to be especially moving or groundbreaking in any way. The last movie that I think he did that was amazing was Letters from Iwo Jima from 2006. So I don't really think Clint Eastwood has made an amazing movie since, and the 1517 to Paris might actually be his worst movie. And the reason is because Clint Eastwood hired the real people who were part of that event to play themselves. Look, let me say this. I fully respect what these guys did during that event. They are the very definition of heroes because they did this incredibly brave act and they basically lived to tell the tale. They basically lived to write a book about this event. But they can't act. I am so sorry, but these people cannot act to save their lives. They're not actors at all. This is a movie that's an hour and a half, which thankfully it's that short, but they're in a majority of the movie. And they seriously cannot hold their ground. They are just so dull, so expressionless. It's almost sad because there are a few professional actors in this movie, most notably Jenna Fischer from The Office and Judy Greer. And there's a scene where the main guy, Spencer Stone, is acting against Judy Greer. And it's almost sad to watch because Judy Greer is actually not very good in this movie, but she's still acting circles around this guy. She's really trying to give it her all, and he's just as expressionless as can be. And it's just really embarrassing to watch these guys act. But I really can't blame them, because I mentioned beforehand, Judy Greer's not good in this movie. Jenna Fischer's not good in this movie. So in a case like this, when you're dealing with bad acting, if it's one guy that's bad, yeah, you can blame it on him. Two bad actors, they really needed help. But when the whole cast of your movie is terrible, that's not their fault. That is a result of bad direction and horrible writing. I really question how much of this movie was actually written. I know it's supposed to be based off a book, but there's a good chunk of the movie that's pretty much video diaries. It's pretty much showing these guys going around Europe right before the events of the train incident, and it feels like it's unscripted. It feels like a Terrence Malick film where he just kind of cuts the camera and lets the actors do whatever they want. And it's so dull and it's just awful. And the stuff that actually feels like it is scripted, when it shows them as kids or when it shows Spencer Stone going through military training, it just feels very generic, and the dialogue is horrendous. It's so bad that the very first line of dialogue in this movie that was spoken, I had to walk out of the theater and actually write it down on my phone just so I could recite it on this review.
What's going on, guys? So I actually did record myself saying the line of dialogue that I was talking about, but the line of dialogue actually consists of a racial slur that begins with a C, ends with an R, and is racist against white people, particularly white people from the southeastern region of the United States. And I want to try to be courteous to everyone out there watching my reviews, and I know there are people out there that get offended by racial slurs of any kind, so I just figured to cut it out for the sake of being courteous to others. And plus, me saying the line really doesn't do it justice, or injustice in this case. It's just one of those things you kind of have to see or hear for yourself and go, did I just fucking hear that? So apologies for cutting this out of the review. I just felt like I had to be courteous to those who might have been offended.
And the second that line was done, I was pretty much like James Franco in the interview, where I'm just like, wait. I seriously had to double take for a second because in my mind I was thinking, Did I seriously hear that? Did somebody actually write this shit down? So is there anything at all that's good about this movie? Because I've been just shitting on it nonstop, and rightfully so. It's a terrible, terrible movie. I will admit that one thing that I actually did enjoy were parts of the actual event on the train. There were a few moments of it where it was actually well shot and kind of intense. It didn't really put me on the edge of my seat, but it was the one point in the movie where I was like, oh, thank God something's happening. And parts of it was done really well. Another thing that I'll say, and this is maybe a backhanded compliment, but the movie never offended me. There's nothing about this that's actually downright offensive at all. It's just poorly made. And I gotta ask this question. Outside of just getting paid to be in this movie, why would these real life guys that were really part of that event want to go through this whole thing again? Because I imagine them filming that whole sequence was like reliving that whole thing that I don't think anyone in their right mind would want to. For me personally, I don't care how much money I'm offered. If I was asked to relive a tragic event, a horrific event, I would say, fuck no, I don't want to relive this horrible moment in my life. Again, it was a brave act that they did, and I truly respect them for it. But I would imagine that it's a scary situation that nobody would want to relive. So the 1517 to Paris, it's terrible. The first half of the story is generic, and then the second half, up until the event, is just nothing. The acting from your leads is on a level of atrocious that I haven't seen in a long time. Probably not since The Room, though not as hilarious. But again, you can't blame the real-life guys for not being actors. That's something you blame on the writer, and you blame on Clint Eastwood for hiring them instead of professional actors. There is nothing at all I could recommend about this movie. I feel like this is going to end up in my bottom 10 list at the end of the year. We'll see what happens. We'll see how the rest of the year pans out, especially since it's just February. But my worst of list from last year featured 2 movies that were in January of 2017. So again, we'll see how the rest of the year pans out, but right now, this is currently the worst movie I've seen this year. Again, it was never offensive in any way. It never made me angry, and I fully respect the guys for the brave act that they pulled off 3 years ago. But this is just a terrible way to represent that heroic act. And that's my review for the 1517 to Paris. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are on the movie, if and when you've seen it. And as always, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.